Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from Passionate Reds, only on All for United. Welcome back to All for United for a very, very special hour on a Busby babe that is known and adored by us all. Sir Bobby Charlton, the centre of our attention for the next hour here on All for United. And this is what makes us different to some of the other fan channels out there. We do a bit from today. We moan when we need to moan. We celebrate when we need to celebrate. But also we take time out to provide you, the next generation and the generation after that, with content in collaboration with the Manchester Munich Memorial Foundation on the players of the past, the players, the history that shaped our club to be what it is now. And the biggest part of our history, the Busby Babes. We've had many shows. Duncan Edwards, Tommy Taylor, Harry Gregg have all been discussed by myself, Roy, and hopefully, let's just quickly test this because we've had some mic issues. Tom, can you hear us? Oh, we can't hear you, Tom. I don't know what's going on. We can't hear you. We're getting us frustrated with Tom. Tom, Roy have joined us for many of these shows. And also Patrick Burns as well. But unfortunately, Patrick can't be here today. So we've got such a good stand-in for Patrick. We've rolled our substitutes and Pete Molyneux has joined us. So we've got authors, we've got historians, we've got first-hand accounts. I think we should get into it, shouldn't we, guys? We should talk about Sir Bobby Charlton. I'm going to try and help Tom with his mic issues. Whilst I do, Roy, we always start our shows with this. Sir Bobby Charlton, what's the first memory that comes to your mind when I say the name Sir Bobby Charlton?
A gentleman, a legend of United, and what a story. I first saw Bobby back in 1955. As a plain Bobby Charlton, who actually was a bit of a tearaway centre forward in the youth team. And he scored loads and loads of goals. I mean, his scoring record, incredible. But it was no wonder, really, because every chance he had from wherever angle, he had a shot. He didn't mind if it went over the bar, his keeper saved it. He was just... and I think he was a happy-go-lucky lad. I know he loved Eddie Coleman greatly because obviously Bobby come from the northeast and was living in digs around Old Trafford, and people like Eddie, he would go and virtually live with Eddie Coleman in Salford, and they were always around together. And Duncan Edwards, even Bobby was in awe of Duncan. And he was in the reserves. I saw him a lot in the reserves and youth team. And one memorable FA Youth Cup final in 1956, when we played Chesterfield. Having won it in 1953, 54, 55. We were going for the fourth time in 1956. And Chesterfield had knocked a very good Chelsea team out on the way. And the first leg was at Old Trafford, and there was Bobby. And in the Chesterfield goal was a 17-year-old lad called Gordon Banks. And 10 years on, 1956, 1966, the pair of them helped win the World Cup, which is also enlightening, I feel, to look back and support the youth team. I mean, I love now even putting the under-18s on, on a normal league game on a Saturday morning, or particularly the Youth Cup. It's important to our history, and I know it's a learning curve and all that type of thing, but I don't want them to get beat. They're important, because if you get in a winning mentality at that age, it stays with you. And so he was a genius in the junior levels and the reserve levels, but he did have a lot of competition, and he didn't really become a first teamer until December 1957, because he had a lad called Johnny Doherty, who was a very decent inside right. Jackie Blanchflower, who played everywhere, was also used as inside right. And then, of course, who came along? Liam Billy Whelan. And Bobby was really third or fourth choice. But he made his debut against Charlton Athletic. in October 1956. And I remember my dad taking me to that game. I was in the Stretford End paddock, and we played Charlton, won 4-2. And it was a day of an England international. I think it was against Northern Ireland. And we were out 3 or 4 players because the internationals were played on a Saturday. And if you got called up, you had to go and play in the international team. So Roger Byrne was in the international team, Duncan Edwards, Tommy Taylor. I've got a feeling Jackie Blanchard might have been playing. It was against Ireland. So we're 4 players down against Charlton. But the likes of Jeff Bent would come in, Wolf McGuinness would come in, and Bobby was given his debut instead of Tommy at centre forward. And he scored 2 goals. He won 4-2. And he really was on the more than the periphery from then on. But as I say, his actual, when he genuinely was picked first choice instead of Whelan or Taylor or Violet, was December 1957, when Matt was getting a little bit naffed off because we lost to 2 London clubs at home against the Spurs and Chelsea. We'd not lost to a London club since 1938. And then, like London buses, we lost 2 on the bloody trot. And Matt made decisions. He bought Harry Gregg. He left Johnny Berry out. He left Billy Whelan out. He left David Pegg out. And obviously, Harry went in goal. Kenny Morgans went outside right. Bobby Charlton went inside right. And Albert Scanlon went outside left. And then off they went. And, he was a first choice for Manchester United officially from that day.
Do you know what? People start to pick up on this, and this has happened a lot to me when I've done these shows. There's been certain names, or so to speak, unfamiliar names of babes that appear. Jackie Blanchard being one of them. For me, myself anyway, who I wasn't particularly knowledgeable about until we started speaking and doing these shows, Roy. And it's got to the point now where we've mentioned Jackie so much on these shows that we're actually going to do a special show on Jackie Blanchard, on Roger Byrne. These names that you can learn so much more about, and their stories as well, are all individually remarkable. And I think just that little tale you've told already there on Sir Bobby Charlton goes to show where he started, where he came from, and not just who he was as a footballer, but as a man as well. And over the next hour, I think all our viewers are going to get a sense of that from stories from yourself and Pete, and hopefully as well, Tom, who's always got a very good story to tell. Just quickly, let's do some shout outs. Get in the live chat, guys. If you're watching on Twitter, come over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/All for United, or just search All for United. Good evening, John, to Fred as well. I know Connor's listening too. And Barry, we hope you are healthy, my friend. Who's watching in Johannesburg right now. Always good to have your company, Barry. David's with us as well in the live chat too. And loads of people telling lots of different stories of moments they've met Sir Bobby or seen or spoken to him as well. Pete, let me come over to you, because I always start off with that really open question on Sir Bobby Charlton. What memories come to mind for you initially?
Well, Roy and Tom were fortunate to see Bobby come through from the youth team, a very good youth team, as Roy said, but with lots of competition, because this was probably one of United's most prolific eras for producing or signing really top players, the Busby Babes. So even if we don't know the individual players, people know the history and how good that team was. But I started watching United in September '64. Bobby Charlton was already an established player, an established international, established legend, I guess, at that time, and a cornerstone of United and England. It was revered. So I caught the second half of Bobby Charlton's career, but what a second half it was. He won 2 league titles with United in '65 and '67, and then finally, of course, captained United to the European Cup win in 1968. And I never tired of saying this, becoming the first English team to win the European Cup, or what's now the Champions League. So he didn't have a fanatical following of Best and Law, but he was a respected midfield general. And with him and Crerand, they seemed to start something like 90% of United's attacks in the mid to late 60s when I started watching. But a couple of things that stood out for Bobby Charlton. One was his renowned for his exceptional shooting. That long-range goal that Ronaldo put in against Tottenham the other week, Charlton was putting those in every 3 or 4 games, and usually even further into the corner or just under the bar. He could hit a shot with such power and accuracy with very little backlift. It took your breath away. And the other thing that was central to his game was just his passing ability. Latter day like Scholes in a way. He could put a ball on a sixpence from 30 or 40 yards. And he was just a very creative, what you call a midfield player now, but he had such grace. The way he just ran along the turf with the ball at his foot. Just such grace. And just when Charlton got the ball, a bit like Best or Law, you didn't know what was going to happen, but you just knew something exciting would.
I think it's amazing that you both mentioned the youth team. And I think, Roy, we've had many conversations about how you would go and watch them, then watch the first team. And ultimately, it was a gamble on who was actually going to start for which team week in, week out. I just want to read out a quote here. Just to reflect on Sir Bobby Charlton as a footballer. And we've always said on podcasts like this, how when you see other professionals or other massively respected figures in the game talk about the babes, these players from the past, that's where you've got to take their accreditation from. That's what you've got to listen to. And that's where you need to map out the picture on how good a player like Sir Bobby Charlton was. And I'm looking at this quote and it's rung to me, and I've used it a lot in the promotion for this show, from Sir Matt Busby. There has never been a more popular footballer. He was as near perfection as man and player as it is possible to be. What was Sir Matt's and Sir Bobby's relationship like, Roy? Did also on top of that, when he was first coming through, was you seeing this excitement from him? We talk about perfection as a player. Was that clear from the early days?
No, not if you take perfection to the the correct terms of being the finished article, because obviously even Bobby at 17 and 18 had areas to work on it. And as I say, one of the traits was in the youth team, he was more of the centre forward. And I'm sorry for those people around, so I'll throw the number 9, the catalyst of the attack. But Bobby, actually, over his career, I'll come back to Sir Matt in a minute, but one thing I will give him ultimate credit for, Bobby always put the team first, which I assume would make him get infuriated with George sometimes. But Bobby would play, I think the year Pete started watching them, 64-5, Pete?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of United's great teams. 64-5, one of United's great teams. And Bobby played at number 8 that season. And I think number 8 was his actual position. But he played at 8, he played at 9, he played at 10, and he played at 11. Now, he wasn't really a left winger, but he sacrificed some parts of his career with United and England to play as an outside left on the left wing. And he didn't throw his toys out of the pram and all that sort of gubbins. He was picked, he wanted to play. I think his relationship with Sir Matt, like all of them really, they were in awe of both Sir Matt and Jimmy Murphy. And it was Jimmy Murphy, of course, who was probably closer to these, these junior babes, the younger players coming through on a day-to-day basis. And Sir Matt would probably pick up more when they actually reached the first team. But, fans were in awe of them, so the players would be in awe of them. I have to say, and I think this is perhaps the point to bring it in the conversation, because Peter picked it up brilliantly from 64 with his link with Creren and, of course, Dennis and Georgia. But I actually think the crash played a massive effect on Bobby's own personality. I mean, up till the crash, I wouldn't say Jack the Lad, but him and Eddie Coleman, he was a bit more worldly than even Duncan Edwards, because Duncan was from Dudley in Birmingham and wherever. And but they were going to the Plaza and wherever in Manchester, It was prior to the swinging 60s, of course, but it was just starting to elevate with the clubs and the music and that type of scene. And, you know, they wanted to go out and enjoy Manchester life. And I think Bobby was a really relaxed, happy-go-lucky, take chances, have real fun. Now, these were real mates. You know, they'd grown up in the youth team. And to survive that crash, and then within, I've not got my figures right, I'm sure he was at the Sheffield Wednesday game, actually. But he came back in the team, within 3 weeks, 4 weeks maximum of the crash. Yeah. And, you know, his best mates are dead. So 3 or 4 weeks, you know, you're looking around the dressing room. And I think that had a real effect on him. And he became the focal point of the team, really. I mean, I know Harry and Bill Foulkes, but we respect that they were defenders and they were both a little bit older. And Bobby, you know, was good-looking lad, blonde hair. And as Pete said, he had this beautiful balance, this whoa, you know, right or left, body swerve, close control, excellent passing, short, long, and obviously wanted to have a shot. And I think the crash.
Roy, sorry, can I just quickly butt in just because you was mentioning about the Munich air disaster there? And I think one of the things that I was going to ask, and maybe you can sort of, as you continue, as you can sort of dwell upon now, actually, if possible, is the fact that he did become one of the pillars of the rebuild, and he showed his qualities. You spoke about some of them there, not just his qualities as an individual to recover from what he had lost personally, when you said friends, colleagues, teammates, but also to have the qualities to lead the side towards the future, to what was next, what needed to happen next. So I don't know if you wanted to hit on that a little bit, right?
No, well, absolutely, because I don't think you can stress enough, I'm sure Tom would as well, I don't think you can stress enough is his friendship with such as Eddie Coleman. Eddie lived near where I lived, down by the docks in Salford there. And you know, Bobby would be round and 3 or 4 of the other players would be round. And we're not talking Buckingham Palace here. We're talking 2 ups, 2 downs. And Eddie's granddad would be having great fun. And they'd be having parties on a Saturday night and singing. And, you know, and they really, Bobby would be staying there, probably sleeping on the couch or whatever. And Eddie's his mate. Now, don't forget, Bobby's come from the Northeast, a place I love. Came from the Northeast to Salford, Manchester, when he's 15. He's now 18. He's growing up. Those 3 formative years have probably been worth as much as the 15 he had in the Northeast. And, you know, he's got 19, 20, and Eddie's got killed. And Duncan's got killed. And Roger Burns got killed. And Tommy Taylor. And Billy Whelan. And David Pegg. I mean, you know, these players, they were so close together. And I think there was a heck of a lot of pressure. I mean, I was only looking at something the other week, and it was about Billy Foulkes, actually. Someone had put a picture on Twitter of a game at Tottenham in 1959, I think it was. And Billy Foulkes didn't play in that game. And the reason he didn't play, I think the stress of coming back and captaining Manchester United, it really caught up with Billy. And he asked to have the captaincy taken away from him. And that's when Dennis Viollet became captain. Now, if that's going to hit a man like Billy Foulkes, who would walk through a wall for fun, you imagine Bobby, 20, 21 years of age, whatever, and all those close friends have been wiped out. And he's now in that position of being able to win something, not just for himself or his club, but for his mates, which he obviously magnificently did, as Pete said, 10 years on.
I mean, it's always tough to move the conversation, you know, on from the Munich air disaster, because for Sir Bobby Charlton as a figure, the way he walked away from the situation as a whole, the qualities he demonstrated to help rebuild Manchester United. Pete, he became such an important figure, didn't he? And that's sort of where I believe, when I look back at the history books, we saw Bobby Charlton turn into this Mr. Manchester United, because he became dedicated to the cause. He was extremely dedicated to the club. He went on to set so many records. When it comes to Sir Bobby Charlton and it comes to his legacy, potentially, do you feel that maybe people don't talk enough about those years immediately after the disaster and what he did, how he helped pick the club up, and the qualities he personally demonstrated to be a huge part of that?
Yeah, well, the answer is yes. We don't cover it enough. I say we, just maybe the club even, and maybe supporters. Podcasts like this help, and I do another one called Walking Down the Warwick Road, and we tried to bring to fans, past and present, some of the lesser reported stuff. But the quote you gave there, Ben, earlier from Matt Busby was second to none. And who better than Busby to judge any footballer and any personality? But I remember, we can cover Bobby's testimonial that was in 1972 later in the programme if you wish, because that was a special occasion. But I had a look earlier today at, I remember Busby had written something about Charlton that day. So this is in September 1972, 14 years after the crash. And Bobby was still playing for United. He'd played for another season, but he had his testimonial. And Busby wrote that when things looked blackest after the accident, and there were times when I felt a great despair, I was cheered enormously to think that Bobby Charlton was there. He was one of the foundation stones, and his presence was a great source of inspiration to keep Manchester United working for its restoration. So that's a glowing tribute from a man who was a cornerstone of Manchester United, recognising the historical impact that Charlton brought. And one thing that doesn't get covered, he took a few weeks to recover after the crash, physically and mentally. I mean, I guess mentally those scars probably are there today, but time moves on. But in the season after United, after the crash, after 57-58, when it all went wrong in that February, Wolves all run away with the league, and United were at the blackest time ever. We didn't know if United would go on then. But in 58-59, so that season obviously started in the August, only 6 months after the crash, United finished second in the league, and with 6 games to go, were actually the favourites to win it. Were in pole position. Bobby Charlton, I think, played in 38 of those 42 games and scored 29 goals. He played 9 times for England that season and scored 8 goals. So if you think of somebody picking themselves up off the ground and trying to pick his team up and his teammates by the scruff of the neck, then there's no better testimony. One, that what Busby said, and two, those stats about what the team did in the season, in the year following the Munich air crash. It was incredible.
Pete, would you put that down to, I'm going to say this, and it might be a twisted thing to kind of say, but hunger from Sir Bobby for everything he's just been through? We've just spoken about how close those lads were, how close the Babes were, how good they were, who we lost, what a tragedy it was, not just off the pitch, obviously, but when it came to Roy, often talks about the experience of watching the Babes and many others watching the Babes and how good they were and the potential there. Do you think maybe Sir Bobby Charlton took all that hunger and all that belief from everything he'd experienced from those players beforehand and managed to put that on the pitch? He was driven to put that on the pitch to represent them.
I guess the answer is yeah. I mean, remember, this is a man of 20 years of age. My girls are 22, got twin girls 22. And I can have to remind myself they're grown up, because in a way they're still your daughters, your children, etc. And you think, oh, are they ready for these things that come along in life? Bobby Charlton, as well as some other players, were dealt one of the most cruelest hands in life. So he lost all his friends, as Roy eloquently said, at the age of 20. There is a thing in life, and it's a real thing, I believe, called survivor's guilt. And I think that element probably drove Bobby Charlton on, and Harry Gregg, and Bill Folkes, Dennis Violet, Ray Wood, the ones that survived and could play again. Because forgetting it's a football team, just that they survived a tragedy when others were killed or injured to a degree they couldn't play again. So I think there was a part of survivor's guilt, but he probably matured overnight. In his head, he would have been older overnight in the sense that all that fun that Roy described about when you're a young lad or a young lass having fun at the age of 20. Something like that happens in your life. And you don't age physically, but you realise, you cross a line where you realise what really matters in life. So to survive mentally, I think you have to have a cause. And Bobby Charlton's cause was resurrecting Manchester United, I firmly believe. Couldn't do it on his own, but he did play a major part with his example and his ability. And Busby in the next few years, and Roy can cover this better than I can, Matt Busby had to kiss quite a few frogs before he found the princes to replace the babes. But Bobby Charlton was the mainstay, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, Ben, sorry for just interjecting there, but I think the way Matt handled him and Jimmy Murphy handled him and the way Bobby responded for such a young person is quite unbelievable. Because if you looked at how England handled him, in a way, it's quite disgraceful. Bobby made his England debut in the April after the crash. He hadn't played for England when the Munich air crash happened. But he was brought in at Hampden Park and scored a brilliant goal. England won 4-0 at Scotland. And then the summer tour was a short one because England had qualified for the World Cup. And England, up till the air crash, had seriously every chance of winning the World Cup. Firstly, it was in Europe. Secondly, Brazil had never won the World Cup before that. Thirdly, Roger Byrne, Duncan Edwards and Tommy Taylor were vital pivots of that England team. And Bobby was given his debut at Scotland. And before they went to Sweden, they went on a tour of Europe. And one of the games was against Yugoslavia. And the game was played in the same stadium in May 1958. March, April, 3 months after the crash, the exact same stadium, because it wasn't Red Star Stadium where the game was played with Red Star Belgrade. It was Partizan Belgrade's ground, and that was the national stadium. So Bobby then, again, not thinking about this England, they picked him to play in that game. So he's walked into that visitor's dressing room less than 3 months after the air crash, and he's looking around. He's got his England teammates, obviously. No other United player. Pretty sure there was no other United player on the tour. And he's going out to play football on the same pitch where he'd been in the February. And England got absolutely hammered 5-0. And the whole team were rubbish. And Bobby took the stick for it. And you think, as Pete's just said, I don't know if he'd have been 21 even then. How do you handle this? And then we get to the World Cup in Sweden, and they took Bobby on the World Cup. And England played 3 group games and went into a playoffs and played 4 games. And Bobby didn't play in any of the matches. And in one of the games, the great Tom Finney, and I mean the great Tom Finney, he was a player, was injured. And Bobby was the natural replacement. And they brought a lad from Liverpool called Alan Accord in. And you're thinking, hang on, it would have been kinder thinking we've got to go and play in Yugoslavia as a friendly. We've got a World Cup where he's not really played international football. To not take him, to keep him out of it. But if you are going to take him, you've got to play him. And I think that showed his strength as well, coming back from that. I think one other point, I'm just going to throw one into Pete, it was just before he started watching him. But Bobby rarely got injured. He got injured in the 62-3 season. After the 1962 World Cup, he got an injury then. And he missed from the August of 62-3 till about the end of October. And that was the season we'd signed Dennis Law. And the first time Bobby and Dennis played together was like 3 months into the season. But Bobby rarely missed games, Pete, did he?
No, it was tremendously consistent. In many ways, it's hard to say he was a perfect footballer, but if you link his ability and it was all round, it wasn't just the shooting and the passing, it was just what he could create and work hard in midfield. But he rarely got injured, as you say. I think he only got booked once in his career, and the referee almost apologised the next day for booking him. It was a handball. Now, when you play that many games, hundreds of games, and he only got booked once, he was a gentleman in that respect. Everything he won with good grace, competitiveness, but good grace. Just going back to that Yugoslavia game then in '58, Roy, did the England team fly to Belgrade?
Yes.
Because the United team, who had gotten through to the semi-final of the European Cup by winning in Belgrade or winning on aggregate, took the train to Milan for the semi-final.
Overland. Yeah. No, they flew.
But did the England team fly to Belgrade?
John Commode's also put in a chat here that he thought the first time Sir Bobby went on a plane post-Munich was between 59, 60.
No. He was definitely, well, it might have been for Manchester United, but he definitely went with England. He'll have flown 3 or 4 times because they went on a tour. I've not quite got the facts from him. They played the Yugoslavia in a game, and I think they played someone else in a game abroad, and they came home, and then they went to Sweden for the World Cup. And I'd be 99% certain that he flew. Now, United didn't fly till 1959 or something like that. But Bobby, so that's one, and I mean, 20, 21 years of age, all his mates have been killed. You're going to play in the actual same stadium.
Yeah, it's mad.
You're going to be in the actual same dressing room because you're the visitors on the same grass. And
it's credit to the fella, but it was part. He then became part of the rebuild that would take Busby 5 years. To find a winning formula again.
Wait, Roy and Pete, are you telling me that baffling decisions used to be made in football back in the 60s as well? Who knew? Yes. This is crazy. We learn something new every day. Look, Pete, you hit on it a second ago, which I thought was quite great. So we're nearly halfway through. So please hit subscribe to All for United. Please like this video. Please check out the guys. I want to talk about him as a player a little bit more. Just get a bit more of a feel about what you saw, what you was watching, how it made you feel. But before we do that, I always like to play a little game on these shows, and it's a bit of like a Sir Bobby, Mr. and Mrs., but it's Roy and Pete, who we're seeing how well they match up. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way and pick numbers instead of positions because CDMs back in the 60s weren't known as CDMs. So I'm going to ask you a very simple question, Pete. What position would you say was Sir Bobby's best position? And I just want a number.
A number, not midfield. Attacking midfield, whatever that number is.
So would you say that was a what did that used to be? Would you say that was an 8?
Yes, eight. Then but it didn't. Numbers didn't matter so much then, unless you were.
Well, you say that, Pete, but Roy's email to explain to me where he thought Sir Bobby's best position was a number, and he picked 8. So well done, you two. You are very well connected.
But a number 8 could have been an attacking striker. It could have been a midfield player. It wasn't. It was only really wingers and fullbacks and goalkeepers that had set positions. Surely, Roy, because Law could have come in at number 8 after Charlton. Charlton's midfield law was attack, but I'm happy to be corrected. But
funny enough, I've looked at this for 60 years, and it's really hit through to me now. If you look at the original programs in the 50s, any team's program, it's got a goalkeeper, it's got 2 fullbacks, it's got 3 halfbacks, and it's got 5 forwards. But actually, the formation that was played by the Busby Babes was obviously the goalkeeper, but it was a back 3. You had the 2 fullbacks, and you had the number 5, would be playing in between. So you had 3 men at the back. You had your number 7 and 11 as out-and-out wingers, and number 9 as out-and-out centre forward. But numbers 4, 6, 8, and 10 were like piston engine. They were going boom, 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 boom. You know. So, for example, if Edwards would run forward, Coleman would cover him, and the number 8 would, or the 10 would play mainly up front or drop a bit deeper. But Bobby tended to be. But as I said before,
but then from the time I watched him, Roy, from '64, he had a number 9 on his back for England and for United. I'm not sure the numbers do it even across the eras.
Well, no, Pete, we respect that. That's
it. It was an attacking midfield player, a Brian Robson type of player. For those that saw Robson.
See what I've done here. I've done an episode of I've done a game of Mr. and Mrs. and I've caused the lovers tiff already. We've just found out you're compatible and you're already arguing like a married couple.
So what was the question?
That 64-5 season, he played it purely as number 8.
Okay.
So let's go back to position then.
Yeah.
Roy, attacking midfielder. Yep. As an attacking midfielder, what did Sir Bobby Charlton bring? Why did he thrive in that position for you?
He brought the air of uncertainty to the opposition. He could play the short pass, but as Pete said right at the beginning, he would pick the ball up in this mythical number 8 position, say on the right-hand side. And he could hit this 30 or 40-yard pass out to his outside left. He could play the ball up to the centre forward. He could come and take the return, play it out to the outside right. His passing skills was marvellous, and his balance and his capacity to avoid crunching tackles. And don't forget, there was some very naughty men playing in midfield in those days, and we just said there about his injury record. He had this grace, this balance, right and left. So again, as a defender, you think, right, next time he comes here, I'm going to do him on the right, and he might have just gone left, and you left. But he also had this shot, as Pete said, this explosive shot. Very rarely would he get a tap in. But he would hit the ball from way outside the penalty area. And, you know, he was a magnificently balanced footballer who was an absolute credit. The interesting thing is, and Pete and I have had this conversation, and I bet he's thinking, Roy's never going to mention this. But the interesting thing is the number of times you'll get asked, what is Manchester United's best team? And you've always got to ask, are you asking what is Manchester United's best 11 footballers? Or are you asking what is their best team in a formation? Because if you're going about Manchester United's best 11 footballers, and you can go back to Billy Meredith, probably even before my time, and look at all of those names, Bobby Charlton, without a shadow of a doubt, would be in that 11, without a shadow of doubt. If, however, you were playing a 4-2-4 game, would he be the 2 midfielders? Because Robson and Edwards probably would be. So where would he play? Would he play 9? Well, no, he wasn't a natural 9 like Tommy Taylor. Would he play 11? Well, he could do, but he wasn't a natural 11. But if you were playing on a midfield, say 4-3-3, imagine Bobby Charlton, Brian Robson, and Duncan Edwards as that 3.
I think that's the perfect note to hand it over to Pete, because Pete, you mainly saw Sir Bobby.
Roy's just started his own podcast here.
Pete, you mainly saw Sir Bobby as a striker, right? Whilst you was watching.
Me, yeah. He could score a lot of goals, but it's mainly coming forward at speed. Roy covered how good he was at evading tackles, etc., and getting out to the wings and finding anybody up front. But it was the speed. He didn't look very, very fast.
No.
But he would be it'd be from box to box, you'd call it now, or in the last 30 years. And it was that bit, he covered the pitch with the ball effortlessly. You can look at the England goal against Mexico in the World Cup, where he starts way back in his own half and then he's getting within shooting distance and bangs it in. There's he could carry the ball at speed from defence to attack and just find men. Crerand and Styles, when they won the ball, in my era when I watched him in the second half of the 60s, won the ball and got the ball to Charlton mainly. Crerand could thread good passes through. But the guy who, as Roy says, you gave it to this fella, Charlton, and the opposition didn't know what was going to happen. So it was his speed he could carry the ball with and then make something happen via other players. And if it came back out to him from anything from 30 yards toward or 20 yards or 10 yards, he could bang it in. I think probably in modern times, if we call it modern times, Scholesy is probably the nearest comparison to Charlton. But he also had a bit of Brian Robson getting the ball from the back to the front, a bit of what Bruno did in his first 6 months at Old Trafford. And probably what we need now, probably what controversially he says Paul Pogba should have been doing for the last 6 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I thought that this morning. I thought, let's talk about Pogba just for a minute. World record transfer fee. A man who's played in the centre of midfield. Not a patch on Bobby Charlton. I mean, sorry, I've insulted everyone. I should stand back to even put Bobby Charlton and Paul Pogba in the same conversation. No. It's just ridiculous. And yet one of them was a world record.
It's easy to think that that's just two older guys' opinion because they're older guys and there'll be a nostalgia around that. Well, of course, there always will be. But I think Roy does look at things objectively, of past, present, and even future. And I try to take away that magic of what you saw at age 10 or 15 or whatever. And Bobby Charlton just would stand head and shoulders above most players. But of course, as we move towards the 60s, the club buys Law and finds Best, as well as some other very, very good players.
Pete, you must be reading my mind. That's the perfect segue to the next question. Thank you.
Fire away.
Beautiful. Now we know a bit more about Bobby Charlton. Let's talk about the success stories. And the big one is the first ever European Cup and the Holy Trinity. Pete, did players like Best and Law and his other teammates as well love playing with Sir Bobby Charlton? Because he made some wicked partnerships on the pitch, didn't he?
Yeah. I think any footballer would love to play with a player of Bobby Charlton's caliber and attitude. And what he could create, you see, all of those were individual brilliant players, but also had a synergy where the three of them took United to another level because they had such brilliance. They all have brilliance in every department, but Charlton with his shooting and passing, Best with his dribbling and scoring and heading, Law with his tremendous acrobatics and reflexes. And that's before you had very, very good players in like Hurd and people at the back, Styles and Crerand and Fouts, etc. So when United when you think about it in the 60s, what Charlton did before United because he survived Munich or because he then helped the team so well in those few years. You see that historically that he became Mr. Manchester United. He just kept playing very, very well at the top level for 17, 18 years. And what he did for those teams with 2 league championships in 65 and 67, and then the European Cup, which was the Holy Grail, mainly because United had got into Europe as pioneers, but also because of the crash. There was some unfinished business. And Charlton was integral to all that. And Best and Law and Charlton they loved playing together. You could just tell him they made goals for each other. There's very little greediness. Best could over dribble a bit, but they all had a team ethic. Busby ensured that.
Yeah, Roy, watching that journey, experiencing that journey of that first European Cup win, seeing the Holy Trinity on the pitch. Do you have any memories of that journey or games on that journey, A? And B, because I love giving you a double-loaded question, was there a moment that you knew you was watching something different? something of different class that in the future could potentially be legacy, because that's what the Holy Trinity are now.
Yeah, strangely enough, anyone who went to the game will have remembered this. But I thought the night you knew they were going to take a lot of beating was a game against Sarajevo. We'd gone over to Sarajevo and drawn 0-0 over there, and these were the days where the nearest airport was 4 hours away from where the ground was, and they had to go coaching over mountains and whatever. And they got a 0-0 draw, and they played at Old Trafford. And Sarajevo gave United a bit of a kicking, a strong side. You'd be at that game, Pete, I would think, possibly. Yeah. And it was the first year of the, I think it was the first year of the away goals that come in. And United went 2-0 up, so the 2-0 up on aggregate. And Sarajevo scored with about 10 minutes to go. And everyone then started thinking, hang on a minute, they get another one, they'll go through on the away goal, you know what I mean? It became a different type of match. But the intensity in the crowd that night, so with age as well, you could win, and you have years of success, and you take it as granted. You just don't love it or live it, and then it goes. Because we're Manchester United, anyone out there listening to this tonight, it will come back. It will come back. It might be next week. It might be next year. It might be 10 years, but it will come back because we're Manchester United. And, the word luck plays a massive role in any of this. And if you want to be really detective and look at it after the crash, and you look at the seasons, 58-9 was exceptional, as Pete said, incredible. They were actually in a better position on the 6th of February in 1959 than they'd been on the 6th of February in 1958 in the league table. But 59-60, 60-61, 61-2 were just very, very average years. The signing of Dennis Law made the difference. The signing of Cantona made the difference. Signing of Brian Robson. Someone asked me this the other day because I just said Law and Cantona are the greatest signings we've ever made. And I was wrong there because Robson also was a great, but strangely, Robson had really good players around him, but we didn't win the league, did we, Pete, in his pomp. It was like at the end of his career. But Robson was another magnificent signing. But going back finally to Bobby, I think the Madrid game away sums it up, really, doesn't it? When I believe Busby reminded them in the dressing room, hey, don't forget, it's 3-2 on aggregate. One more goal. We were 1-0 up from Manchester. We were 3-1 down on the night. One more goal, you're level. And of course, winning there, and it was fate then, wasn't it? Wembley at the final and everything. And Bobby, but that night, as it turned out, was the beginning of the end. George said it was, and well, I'm sure it was.
Right, we should dwell on our greatest triumph a bit longer before we start.
Well, it was fairy tale stuff, wasn't it? And I'm not doing this chronologically at all, Pete, but obviously 66 came before and the World Cup. How special was Sir Bobby in that tournament?
Again, by then he'd become not a veteran. He was still, but he'd had a lot of experience. He'd played for England since 58, so 8 years experience. Played most games for England. I would say he was a regular by then. Very much respected and revered, not just because he was a nice fella, but because of his ability and his commitment. So 65 United won the title. Ramsey, the England manager, got a kind of formula together with these wingless wonders. Bobby Charlton was pivotal to that, as he was for United. because he could get the ball from defence to attack very quickly, and he's good at finding men. But he'd won in 1966. He won English Footballer of the Year, Ben, and he was European Footballer of the Year, the Ballon d'Or, as it's more referred to now. So he'd won that, and then of course England are playing at home. We had great expectations. I was only 12 years of age, but I remember it. Charlton was a kind of lead figure, I would say, of the team. Bobby Moore, great captain, but younger than Charlton. So I wouldn't say. I'd say Charlton, a bit like with United, Charlton had that spirit that they wanted to see something through. One, restore Manchester United to the heights of club football, with winning the European Cup, and for England to lift the most prestigious trophy in the international game. Played a leading part in '66 for England, and then 2 years later, again at Wembley, at the same place, led United to that famous victory. Captain, pushed them on all the way. Also scored the first goal. This is in '68 in the final for United, with a header, which was very rare. Something he didn't do was head the ball very often, and he didn't head goals very often, but he scored that night with a glancing header. So very much leadership on the pitch. Bobby Charlton often ended any game, but certainly the big games, exhausted. He went to bed and missed the celebrations after the European Cup final at Wembley. He was exhausted. He ran his socks off every minute of every game for United.
Just taking that on a bit further, Ben, a good friend of ours, Barry Schmeitzer there, as Doc United, has put a question out to Pete and myself that, did Sir Bobby retire at the right time? Should he retire sooner or later? I had the great joy of spending a couple of hours with Martin Buchan about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago. And he was absolutely adamant that when he signed for United in '72, Bobby, I think, played the following season and then retired. And he said he was the fittest player in the team when he retired. He could have definitely played another season. But I think then it really hit him that, his time was coming to an end, and what was coming through was nothing like, if I went back to that conversation in 1955-56, when there's a young Eddie Coleman, there's a young Duncan Edwards, there's a young Albert Scanlon and David Pegg and Wilf McGuinness, and he looked and what was coming through. But Martin Buchan was adamant that he could have played another season after he retired. He was that fit. But you've got to go sometime, and I think he'd more than earned his dues forever in the history of Manchester United.
Do you know what I think? I think it's just from what I've learned on here and just researching the show. I think it's absolutely madness that a lot more younger fans don't talk about Sir Bobby in the way that we talk about other greats within the game. And the reason why I say that is, of course, he's revered, he's respected from Manchester United fans globally. And I like to think that the younger generation will do their research and realise what Sir Bobby done. But I don't think enough respect can be put on a player's name from the achievements that he did go on to achieve on the pitch, not just rebuilding and being a crucial part of a rebuild after everything that he and the club went through after Munich, but then also in a year that you go on and win a World Cup to the season before winning the league. I mean, I know it wasn't part of Manchester United's most successful period ever, so to speak, and he had some tough times as well. But when he did lead the team to silverware, or the club won silverware, or he went on to achieve something on the pitch, he was a man. He was a man who pulled the club to that achievement. He might have had a great group of players around him, but he was the one who would pick up the English Footballer of the Year trophy at the end of that season. He'd be the one who wins the Ballon d'Or at the end of that season. And I think it's really telling how then other pros come out and talk about him during those seasons. And I genuinely feel like, and I can't believe I'm saying this, when it comes to the Babes and it comes to historical footballers of Manchester United's past, he might even go down as underrated if we don't keep this history alive. That's the tipping point we're on at the moment. And more people need to learn about his successes and about how great he was and about what he achieved, because what he achieved was phenomenal. Putting in mind what United were going through at that time and what we were all going through. Well, sorry, you guys more than me, but in terms of Manchester United fans were going through at that given time, and it's quite sad. It's quite emotional that, you know, Sir Bobby Charlton, for goodness sake, he's got to stand for a reason, guys. Although that can never do you know what I mean? He's part of that Holy Trinity statue for a reason, but I don't think that can ever do justice in terms of what a figure Sir Bobby Charlton was to our history and to the foundations.
And we don't just put statues up for no reason at Old Trafford. And sometimes you get great players, and United have had them that might not win anything or win much. But if you just forget all the great play, the great entertainment it provided and the excitement, it also could show the medals. So he got he won. He was a World Cup winner with England in '66, European Cup winner with United in '68, 3 league titles, 57, 65, 67, FA Cup winner in '63, Youth Cup winner 3 times, 54 to 56, European Footballer of the Year '66. He was runner-up in '67 and '68, English Footballer of the Year '66, United's all-time top goal scorer, 249 for 43 years. He held that, so Rooney overtook him. He set a club record of 758 appearances, and that stood for 37 years till Giggs overtook him. He was England's all-time top scorer with 49 goals, and that stood for 45 years, Ben, till Rooney took that over as well. And he gave 20 years service as a player for Manchester United. He got the OBE in '69 and a CB in '74, and he was knighted in 1994. Now, you'd struggle to find many other people in any walk of life, or even in the military or whatever walk of life, to equal that record. And that's why I think he is Mr. Manchester United, because we kept him, although he left and went to Preston to find his feet away from the club. He came back as a director. I think he did help guide United, the modern day United. He helped Fergie, I'm sure, with private conversations after the pitch. He backed Fergie at a critical time. And so he's become this legend for real reasons rather than just celebrity reasons. And
also, Peter, I was just going to say on the goal record, he wasn't an out-and-out striker.
No,
but that's what he brought. That's what his natural talent brought to the game. And also, again, what we've learned in here, he was rarely injured for 17 seasons at first team level. He more or less played 40 games.
Yes.
On those pitches, in those
conditions. It's just he's just coming across to me more and more, and the more that we speak to him, the more I learn, even just from the show. Near perfection, as Sir Matt Busby once said, as a man and as a player. Go on, Roy.
I just wonder, whether I mean, we're all different, and as I say, the word luck does play an important part. I just wonder whether Bobby actually thought he should have been manager instead of Wilf. Now, on the face of it, Bobby's managerial skills were not that obvious, but his leadership qualities were really obvious. And again, a manager is as good as the people he's got alongside him. And Matt can have all the glory, rightly so. And I know we don't, Ben, and others like Pete's podcast as well. Jimmy Murphy will never ever be left in the wake. It's the two of them. And I just wonder that regarding that time with Wilf, that if a Bobby Charlton was a manager, on his own, he probably wouldn't have made it. But if he'd have had the right man alongside him, which could have been still Jimmy Murphy, it could have been a Johnny Carey, around that time, because Johnny Carey had helped Notts Forest come second in '67 to us. But if he'd had, a strong personality, the good guy, bad guy, it just might have worked. But Pete put it so eloquently there. I mean, let's throw the question the other way. What else could he do? What else? I know he won the Central League, by the way, Pete. He won that as well.
Yes.
No,
but I left that one out, Roy, to see if you'd pick up on it.
Well, but what else could he win? And it's incredible. And in 1970, of course, when European teams in South America are always going to struggle anyhow to win World Cups, Alf Ramsey took him off. England are winning 2-1, and we got beat 3-2 in the end. And I don't think he was knackered. I think he was just holding him back because we were going to win, and we've got him in the next match. So in every game, good and bad, he played a vital role. I think we just mentioned it. If you start with if you start with all those playing abilities, medals, and achievements, if you throw in director, if you throw in the stand, if you throw in the Holy Trinity, then that's when the word legend should really be used. And there'll be players who I won't name who are talked about today as a United legend. And he played 100 games for the club and might have won one cup or whatever.
I'd go further, Roy. There's a culture at the moment, especially with maybe my generation, where we use the term GOAT, greatest of all time. And that seems to have become the new legend in terms of that it's used way too loosely in some remits. And I would say that Sir Bobby Charlton is called a legend, but he shouldn't be called a legend. He should be spoken amongst the greatest of all time. And there's so many contributing factors that have to go into that. And I think the fact is not, I'm hoping some people can watch and listen to this and listen to some of the fantastic work that Pete and Tim do, read some of the fantastic books yourself and Tom put together and the archives that you bring information out of and make public so that everyone can learn more about some of the Babes and their story, but also players like Sir Bobby Charlton, players like Tommy Taylor, by the way, who obviously had this phenomenal goal scoring record that ultimately and was such an incredible player that people are forgetting about and missing out on knowing about because potentially the generations are passing them by. So I just hope that anyone listening to this right now might be sat there going, do you know what? I never actually knew Sir Bobby Charlton was that instrumental. I never knew he was that good, because if they turn around and say that, we've done something remarkable today, because I really do think that Sir Bobby Charlton should be spoken about as one of the greatest of all time, and not just a legend of our football club. He's one of the, if not the greatest players to play for Manchester United. That's a statement, and that needs to be said more, in my opinion, anyway. Quickly, guys, only because we've learned a lot, and I know that we've gone over the hour now, and I don't want to keep you guys for too long. If you're watching, subscribe, like the video, share this far, please share this far and wide, because if you do, then you're helping other generations pick up on some of these fantastic heroes of our past who have set the foundations. But Pete, I don't know if you've watched these shows before, but we always end the show with 2 questions. So I'll start with the first question. I'll come to each of you with that. Roy, watching Sir Bobby Charlton as a fan in the stands, as a Manchester United fan, how did he make you feel?
He made me feel proud, like I still am, every game, to be a Manchester United supporter. He was part of it. And I think the comments you've just made and Pete made, it's an interesting one to use the word barometer and put Sir Bobby Charlton's name out there and say, okay, then show me, as Pete would say, show me the medals, show me the achievements, and you would struggle. I mean, I've said many a time that Georgie Best was the greatest footballer I saw, because Georgie, was an extrovert, gave all that, and Bobby did his game, every team, home or away. And, all this kissing of the badge and all that, he didn't need to do that. You just knew as a fan, he was a Manchester United player.
Yeah.
Pete, same question to you. How did watching Sir Bobby Charlton make you feel?
Roy summed it up perfectly. Pride, excitement, and that he was going to lead my team onto something to win that day, to win that tournament we were in. He was Manchester United. It was me on the pitch, and he was a manager on the pitch. He excited me. He was very much in the style of Manchester United's daring do tradition, But sometimes for all that list I went through quickly about the stuff he won as well. I was lucky enough. We all gave Bobby Charlton a good send off. I think his last game was against Sheffield United at home, and the crowd gave him a great send off. But his last game on English soil was at Chelsea the week after, and I went down there with a mate called Jeff Malloy. I used to go to every game home and away then. And when we got down to the ground, the United end was closing, the turnstiles were shut. So we went round to the infamous shed. Now, the shed in 1973 was a no-go area for away fans. So we stood there quietly for 90 minutes and ignored the bile that was directed at the United players and the United fans by the Chelsea faithful. And you just had to keep your mouth shut. They won 1-0. It didn't matter. It was the last game of the season. But as the final whistle blew, Bobby Charlton was encouraged by some players, because he was very humble as well, to do a lap of honour. Now there'd be elephants on the pitch and dancing horses, but they just encouraged him to do a lap of honour. And me and Jeff wanted to clap and applaud him, but we didn't show any loyalties. But he came round to the shed towards the last on the end of his lap of honour, and we knew that if we clapped, that we knew they'd know that we were Manx. But in a split second, as Charlton reached the shed, the mood changed completely, and the whole ground started applauding and chanting Bobby Charlton's name. And as he came to the shed itself, they were applauding and cheering, and it reached a crescendo. And so we could join in. It was great. But that was a very rare show of appreciation for an opposing player from a very, very partisan crowd. And me and Jeff, I remember, looked round in amazement. It's the first time we'd experienced that from opposing fans on their own ground. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I can remember it to this day. And we couldn't believe the reaction. And that was because it was a great farewell to one of United and football's true gents and great players. Not just that United fans adored him. Other fans really admired him and respected him, even if they didn't shout about it too much. But at the end, on that day, in his final appearance, the credit to the Chelsea fans all around the ground.
This always happens at least one time on these podcasts. There's a story that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and that just happened through that story. That's why I went like that halfway through, because literally I'm back standing up as we speak, because I think that speaks volumes of everything we've spoken about, and is actually the perfect way to more or less end this Bobby Charlton special. And I feel like I've actually been a little bit more animated during this show than I usually am, so I'm sorry about that, because I know a lot of you don't want to hear from me, but absolutely valid question and point of view from someone who never watched Sir Bobby Charlton play. I have a good understanding of United's history, not as good as these guys, or maybe even just as good as the next man. I genuinely, after this episode and the research I've done, feel so passionate about preservation and what it means to preserve. I think legends isn't, for the babes, and especially for some of the babes, legend isn't a big enough word. You're looking at icons. You're looking at, and the only terminology I can use from us guys is GOATs, the greatest footballers of all time. That's the only way you can describe some of these players, because if they certainly got to fulfill their potential, especially the ones that we sadly lost, that's how we'd be talking about the majority of them. That's for sure. So let's end the show with the last question that I always ask, and I always put you on the spot with it. We don't like to play on this bit. Roy, 3 words that come to mind for you to describe Sir Bobby Charlton.
Mr. Manchester United.
I think I'm going to get the same answer here from Pete Molyneux as well. Pete?
It was his to start with.
I can't beat that. But yeah, Mr. Manchester United. Perfect.
Guys, genuinely an honour to spend an hour and 10 minutes with you chatting about Sir Bobby Charlton. Thank you so much. I hope we've done him justice. Next Tuesday, we'll be back talking about Roger Byrne. Yep. Same time, 8:30. Hopefully, we'll have Tom Clare with us. Unfortunately, he has some mic issues. We'll work hard on that this week to get him on the show. It's just so great to see him also healthy in the bottom corner of the screen and seeing him well. And hopefully, Patrick Burns would have fought off COVID and will be able to join us this time next week as well. Pete, thank you so much for coming on and saving the show, Pete.
Good 50, a great 50p, that, Ben.
Yeah, I tried my best. And Pete, quickly, because you and Tim do some fantastic work with your podcast. Do you want to quickly give it a shout out?
Well, it's called Walking Down the Warwick Road because we look at United's great past from various angles, players, seasons, fans, etc. We're up to about episode 14, the start of April, and we've got Roy's on that, and I know that sometimes some people aren't interested in history, and I respect that, whether you're a football fan or not. But so that's fine. But some people are, and if they want to walk down the Warwick Road with us, we're more than happy for them to join us. I think the handle is on Twitter at Warwick Road Walk, but it's on my at Pete Molyneux. It's on my site, and we don't live in the past. I'm still a season ticket at Old Trafford, a season ticket over at Old Trafford. So I look very much to the future. I enjoy the present-ish. But as Take That once said, you can look back, but don't stare. So we look back on walking down the Warwick Road at some of the great things we've discussed tonight. And it's been an honour and a pleasure to join you tonight.
Thank you, Pete. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. Please go and check that out because as Pete's just described there, they do take moments in United's history and really talk about them in a way that makes you feel like you're there. And that is what I love about that podcast and has always loved about it. That's also what I love about these shows and having Roy on as well. As you see, you probably know Roy's handle anyway. It's Roy MBE. He has to tell everyone that he's an MBE. And sorry, Roy, I didn't put it in my opening statement. I apologise, mate. I hope you're feeling better next week as well, Roy. I know you're a bit full of cold at the moment. So I hope you're feeling better next week. For now, we're off to have an early night, I think. You guys take care, and we'll see you this time next week. Tomorrow, coming up, will be a special show with James and Phil Brown. Mannequins will be joining us to chat about what we need to potentially end the season positively / top 4. Is it still on? Join us for that tomorrow. We'll speak to you guys soon. Bye for now.
Cheers.